learning in the workplace in the past 20 years? My little notes say technology has evolved our workplace entirely. COVID really highlighted the necessities of technology in the workplace when we had to heavily rely on it to continue our jobs. It also made us evolve into depending strictly on technology to move forward.
Kind of
100%.
backpacking off that. I also think it's like really helped flexibility. Like you
Mhm.
said, when we had COVID, it just really like made things more flexible. And a lot of different technologies emerged from that. Like we saw a lot more highly use of what we're using right now. We're using Zoom. And that was sometime used, but definitely not to the degree it is now. And definitely in our classes and stuff, teachers implemented a lot more.
Mhm.
And they're more flexible to recording lectures via Zoom and just really making things a lot more accessible online and creating it where it's an easier balance between if you have in class or like in person stuff rather than having it online, you can just kind of switch between the two with a lot more flexibility.
I agree.
100%. And then also it's just like technology has like greatly impacted things like just like you said, hybrid, just like being hybrid and like seeing the difference between like an in-person workplace and being offline. So kind of impacting the dynamic that people are having like offline and in person. And so it's a lot easier to just kind of like disconnect kind of. You kind of see this kind of difference in like um values as well as just like how do I put this? Just like emotion towards working because a 9 to 5, like if you're at a 9 to 5, right? You'll have to like driving home versus like ending a call feels like two kind of like different kind of things where it's like my time is like right as it's 5 o'clock, getting off the Zoom, and then my work day is done versus like if it's a 9 to 5 and you're somewhere else, it's a lot easier to stay later and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's just kind of what
100%
I'm
agree.
thinking.
And
I
also
also,
it's very cost effective, I would say.
mm,
And that opens up a lot more, it opens up a lot more jobs because, for example, like my dad works almost completely online, and when they do have to go to office, they'll go for like a Q1 meeting or something. It definitely allows things to be, of course, more cost effective because they're not having to rent out as many buildings. They're not having to pay for like all the added cost of having offices. So it helps cost. It can create more jobs even. And like you said, I think it creates also a continuous learning culture because it's a lot easier. Like you said, driving home, there's a lot more added time, whereas when you can just get off the Zoom call and then continue something else, I think it creates a learning culture. And with the rapid race of technology changing, makes it a lot easier. And everything's like adapting to it. So that's what I would say.
I also think that it has helped one thing that we've discussed in some other HR classes is we've always focused on like children's learning and objectives and how kids learn. We never really focus on adult learning and having hybrid ways or online ways or technology now to where you can educate on your own time. If there's a certification or class you want to take, you can take it after work or you can take it via online, in your spare time. It's really helped people be able to further their education, I think.
100%. Where I'm seeing all these like different things where you can get like certified for like mental health, like certified mental health training or like different like HR certifications or tech certifications that are all online, like Amazon Web Services, all that kind of stuff, where it's
Hmm.
like you can get all these different services and like certifications under your belt in the span of like a couple months maybe that like you would have to find like without technology it would have been like you'd have to like go some like you just wouldn't have that amount of space to have these like large in-person classes. It'd probably be a lot more expensive. But not to say that there aren't like negatives to technology in the workplace, as you like as is kind of apparent with like the tech industry, with like the overhiring during COVID, and then like all like the drawbacks of that. But I think that's
Hmm.
like a whole nother like issue, and
That's
it's like
a
kind of like
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a whole other thing that's like
Yeah. Yeah. No, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I agree with what you said, Will, on like the personalized learning segment where there's so many different categories now to where you can seek. There's huge classes that you can do online. You can pay for courses and stuff that are like outsourced through different companies and they offer certifications. But there's also very like niche stuff that you can get online now because it opens up more communities where, people would have to be in person in some of these things and there's not that much of a target audience, but whereas online, it pretty much can reach the whole world. So it creates more niche stuff. that's not as like well appreciated, and then you can kind of get more into that. So I think that offers more personalized learning, and it definitely keeps people more educated on certain topics that usually would be swept under the rug.
Also, like one thing I think we overlook that we've all adapted to using is the healthcare, the technology in our healthcare. Like we
100%.
FaceTime our doctors and get what we need when before you had to take half a day off work, go to the clinic, whatever, before you could get any kind of healthcare.
Yeah. Information is so much more like streamlined. Like just like I don't know, like obviously I don't know like the inner workings of like healthcare and like doctors and stuff like that, but I imagine like how much faster it is to reach like a healthy diagnosis just by like
Hmm.
figuring out symptoms and all that kind of stuff. And then like not just that, like in like the thought process of like we were saying how easy it is to get information like in the workplace it's a lot easier to like just adapt to whatever things that you need to like learn on the go where
Mhm.
it's like just like learning the necessities and like maybe like even like upward mobility whenever you're like in a new job environment, right? Like learning those new skills is a lot easier than it was beforehand where
Yeah.
it's just like I don't know, that's kind of a
I,
rabbit hole.
no, I
But
agree for sure.
Hmm. So I think we talked about a lot of positives that technology has shaped the learning in the workplace. What would y'all think would some of the negatives be?
Well, technology in itself,
Hmm.
failing. Like I
well,
can't today have
100%.
no
I would,
Wi-Fi or whatever.
yeah, I would think that sometimes it creates a lot of shortcuts that
Mhm.
sometimes people don't always like. Sometimes I don't know, there's always a shortcut in technology where you can do something quicker and but you're not really retaining as much information. I know that's definitely seen a lot and talked about in college classes like we have. It's a big strict use on AI and how you utilize and actually use AI. I think it is helpful in certain areas, but I think it creates a lot of negatives in certain cases where people are very blatant when they use it and just it's kind of just copy it in, paste it out, and they don't really retain it. So I'd say that's a negative effect, but besides the shortcuts and not really retaining all the information, I'd definitely say the positives outweigh the negatives.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Well,
Um,
I agree, but there I think that like that difference between like learning and knowing, like where it's like people will like it's like kind of I think it's called the Google effect, where it's like there's just such a reliance on
mhm.
instead of actually like learning the information for yourself, there's more of a emphasis on just like, oh, I can know it really fast if I just like kind of Google it. So while you may be able to like learn skills if you take the time to actually like take the time and effort to hone in on those skills, there has been more of a shift towards like I can Google it really fast and I can just like know it in an instant, giving that shortcut without having that background of knowledge that would help you actually like hone in your skills in the long run. So I think in the long run, it creates these kind of like these gaps of knowledge where
100%
as
agree.
people should be able to know more things all this like kind of sort of like gaps in knowledge cause like this like inability to move as upward as you should be able to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100% agree with that. It definitely was reflective of, I think, when we had COVID and everyone moved back to in-person classes. I feel like there's definitely sometimes a little bit of a disconnect between what the teachers actually trying to teach and the students. You know, they just didn't seem like, and I'm not saying it's everyone, but I think I definitely it was me too. I just couldn't like I had to really focus more because I was so used to doing everything online where I was on my own schedule and then kind of moving back into that in-person class and then having to well when you're online, I don't think you think as much. You're like you said, the Google effect. You're able to just look things up and get a short-term answer to stuff. Whereas like this, we're having a discussion, we're actively kind of bouncing off people's ideas and kind of getting our own perspective on it. So I think definitely how we utilize it now, we are more like cognitive about it. We definitely think about it more now. And like a higher education sense, it's definitely a lot stricter than how it was in high school in certain areas. But that's what I would say.
I also think it can implement a sense of laziness, to put it
Yes.
in certain terms. Like even when we were learning online, the professor could Zoom record and we could watch it later. We didn't have to be there, and we relied on that heavily, or we weren't getting up and getting dressed and going out into the general public. So therefore, we got into a habit of wearing our sweatpants around all the time.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
it was hard for people to get out of that.
100% agree. Y'all want to move on to the next question?
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%.
All right, so the next question says, what does Tom Friedman mean when he says average is over? What I kind of got from this is that he highlights the growing challenge between the remaining competitive competition and increasingly automated and like globalized. That's like a more of a technology driven world.
Yeah. I kind of want to jump in on this and be just like, it's a lot of like about I kind of like what I got about of it out of it, sorry, I'm like tripping over my words, is like there needs to be more with this increase in technology, this increase in automation, there needs to be this increase in individualization, creativity, adaptability, continuous learning. Because like think about like how the bottom line job, like these bottom entry level jobs are at the moment, right? You need it gets like really like weird and like it's like entry level like positions where it's like you need this like 10 years of like experience or something like that, but there's a lot of jobs that would need lots of certifications, lots of like background like necessity before, and where in the past you may not have had you may not have had to do that in the past is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm writing this down.
You're all
Um,
good.
I also think that like what he means by that is to add to what you were saying, like we can no longer be average. We can no longer just be high school graduates and go and get those entry level jobs. Like we have got to have something to add to ourselves because it's so easy to access now.
Hmm. And like something I also got from it, like I feel like companies now they really strive for you saying like having a lifelong learning. So like you're
Mhm.
always wanting to learn, you're always wanting to adapt. Especially with how technology is, it's always it's always evolving. So I think that in order to succeed in most of these jobs now, like you have to have a love for learning and like a lifelong learning where you're always embracing the like having a growth mindset, so to speak. Whereas nothing's really like fixed, it's always continual. And acquiring these new skills, like they're gonna benefit you in your job and other aspects of your life. And I would kind of say, segue into my next thing, I would say that soft skills definitely matter, and being able to talk to people is a huge part of every job. And being creative is a huge part of every job because sometimes if you can't think out of the box, it definitely puts you in a predicament where if other people see it differently and being more creative and having more technical skills, it puts them at an advantage. Whereas if all you really known is the book and you studied what the answers should be, when you're put in a position where the answer really isn't what you think it is, and you're kind of stumped on that. I think that's really where it matters. So that's what I would say that you have to be like almost above and beyond now in almost all areas just besides academics. So,
For sure. I also think that like well, it's more of an old school way of thinking, but everybody comes into this to situations thinking they know it all, they have the degree, they are confident in their job and all of these things. But it doesn't matter how long you've been in any kind of industry, you still always have to be open to learning because otherwise you're putting yourself in a box and not thinking outside or going outside or being accepting of other people's ideas even. And so then you just become a creature of habit and unteachable, and that puts a roadblock on your whole entire program.
Yeah, and I think that's especially important because like the world's always changing, you know what I mean? It's always changing. There's always new things happening and there's always something new to like learn to like be ahead of the curve and to actually be in the moment, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
mhm. And I would say that the competition between just the competition has grown as a whole. So, a lot of people in the US, and I would say in tech, I would say a big majority that people don't realize is there's a lot of people on worker visas,
Hmm.
and that's a whole new like competition.
Oh,
For example, like my brother worked at Amazon this recently summer, and like there's just a lot of diversity, and he told me a lot of the people were actually on worker visas, so it kind of puts you like in a different competition. It's like it really is global competition when you think about it. A lot of these big jobs that are they can outsource and get someone like it's I'm not saying you're replaceable, but
you
if you're
are.
not meeting, you pretty much are to an extent, especially with like how like prominent automation and AI is now, where like very routine, like repetitive task, like it saves you so much money when companies install like automation software. Um, and that's kind of what they're thinking about at the end of the day. Definitely, if you're able to bring something new to the table and like I said, have those soft skills and technical skills, it definitely raises you. So that's
Um,
what I would say.
I run the HR department at my family's company right now, and I would say 30% of our employees are on a working visa.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy, and people don't realize. You're right.
A lot
People
of people don't realize it.
no.
Especially, I think that like kind of goes into like the kind of like the discussion like journal thing that we had this week, whereas like
Hmm.
globalization is like had such a huge effect on how the world is like kind of evolved as a whole. Like I just like a kind of connection there that I just kind of saw.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Number three, why is understanding adult learning important for a HRD major? Like I said, I kind of see this firsthand. And like I said earlier, we focus so much on children's learning, we don't focus on how adults withhold information. And I feel like it's very much overlooked in today's world. And so when you are in a HRD position in a corporate world, your main job is focusing on teaching these adults whatever you're needing them to learn, whether it's a program within your company, whether it's a skill, like you're constantly trying to teach them and you have to come up with ways to keep their attention because let's be honest, like sitting here watching a video is boring.
Yeah.
And everybody has thought that that's the only way to learn with that technology, but like we've said before, it's evolved so much. There's so many more ways to learn, and it falls into furthering their education, I would say, in that setting.
100%. And a lot of that is like kind of what we talked about earlier, where it's like there's just been this need to like in any capacity to like as we grow to just keep learning because all these new things are constantly happening. So this necessity to be able to teach other people these new different like AI technologies or different like systems that we are putting into place, there's this increasing need to be able to actually retain that information and not just be able to like not just like know it, but to like actually understand what's happening and kind of the why, especially if like people are in like I guess I'll talk a little bit more about like tech stuff in the next portion, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And
And
they
something, oh yeah, you go.
retain it and apply it is like what I would add to your.
And also something I think is like being able to keep like who you're working with motivated. So like being in an HR standpoint, like learning like career advancement and like kind of letting them know that and showing like how there's personal and career growth within this company and kind of letting them know so they can stay motivated and engaged. Because sometimes, I mean, if you've been stagnant, it's gonna definitely like not hinder you, but it's you're gonna think differently if you stay stagnant in a company when you feel like you're giving your all, like emotionally. So I think being able to keep them engaged and motivated and being able to really show them like, hey, look, we do recognize all the hard work you're doing and we want to compensate you for that. So I think that's a good way of keeping people motivated and then so they continue to keep learning and stuff.
I agree. 110%. Are we good on that one?
Yes, and so we
Perfect.
can move on to the next one where it says, why is understanding adult learning important for TCMG, which is technology management major?
Yeah. I guess I'll like jump into that one because I was like kind of thinking about that, about like that importance that we were talking about of like teaching other people, right? Tech management, like one of the parts is like help desk, right? Where you're gonna be
Hmm.
helping, well, we're gonna help like other people in like either professional environments understand how to use an either like an app or like I said, AI in a any capacity.
Hmm.
And there is a necessity that whenever we're actually teaching these people how to use these technologies to not just like give them the one case scenario that will help them, but to have be able to share the way to like use it effectively
Mhm.
and so that they will be equipped with all that they need in like any case scenario, not just like a single use, like and have them keep calling over and over again, leave them being able to like just like know how to use that like technology for themselves like in that moment and in the future. It's
Yeah, I
kind of
would say like a key part of that is having like whether you're designing apps like you said or helping people on help desk, just having it like a user-friendly mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and understanding like not everyone's going to be like specialized in certain areas and being able to kind of speak on these terms in more simplified manner where they're able to digest it and um like understand it. Like it could be as simple as like doing like a password reset to actually having something technical where not everyone could understand. That's not in your major, for example. So I think being able to be like user friendly and kind of get the message across in a way that they can understand it and that they can actually retain what you say is
Hmm.
very important. And then also having it like scalable. So like when these like solutions are actually made, like having them meet the growth of like the organization. Like I would say Texas A&M is a great example of that because it's like as you see like the enrollment numbers just keep going up. I think they finally are
Cut them
trying to put
off.
a pause to the
Yeah.
growth, which is
Yeah.
good. But like the technology solutions that we have here definitely are scalable and they are meeting the growth of the organization. But so I said that's something huge. Um, that's pretty important in organizations too as well.
One of my like personal experiences and do a little share and tell. We're currently so we have a commercial construction company, and like I said, I do the HR side of it, but we're currently implementing a system called Strumus, where it tracks everything. It tracks every piece of metal we buy, it tracks every weld, one of our people, all of these things. Well, we all have to learn it. Streamless learning. It's like 27 hours of learning. And this poor technology guy, I'm sure he's blocked my number or something because I've had to call him on him for everything. But it's their job and it is so important when people are learning something new. Like they have to be available and educate you on that. Like you're the person that you don't realize it because you don't work for that company, but you're streamlining that company's entire production and you're the guy we call.
100%. That's why I think being user friendly is so it's such a key point because these people aren't going to be the expertise that you are.
Right.
Because like you've been doing this your whole degree, whereas these people were just not trying to learn it and kind of get an understanding of it. So that's I think being very user friendly is super helpful.
100%. And then like being able to actually teach them how to do these things is the cornerstone of efficiency. You know what I mean? If you can't teach the person how to actually use what they're trying to use effectively, then they won't be able to do what they want to do with their like let's say like with your company, right? Like if not everyone is able to actually use the program to its fullest, it becomes more of a detriment than an actual help. And then it at the end of the day, it just becomes a waste of money in the long run.
A $20,000 waste of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, you're absolutely right. Like you're the guy that holds the keys to it all.
Percent. But I think that leads us to that final question, I guess.
Number five, what does table 1.1 on page 8 of the textbook have to do with adult learning on your future careers?
So what I kind of got from it was like a very global perspective on it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of showing like that when you're looking at global stuff, professionals should consider like every detail. So this is like assuming like the cultural details, the economic details, like geographically where they are and like the differences between here and there. And then also I would say something like is like the digital divide, so to speak. So like a lot of people don't understand that like only 30% of the people have access to the internet. And I know that is becoming more like
It's growing, but
growing, and there's certain technologies like Starlink and stuff that definitely help in more remote areas, like I said, that are geographically just harder to get internet access there, and that some of these countries are still being developed to a point where that's not their first need. Like having basic infrastructure like and having good medicine is definitely a more priority than that. But being able to understand stuff from a global perspective is, I think, what I got the most from that table.
agreed.
100%.
And I think that like even in a hiring process, an educating process, or just being plain coworkers, you have to be open to understanding all sorts of globalization and people come from all walks of life and you have no idea how they might internalize things culturally or any of those levels. And so you always have to take that into consideration when you're working with other people.
Yeah. And I think something interesting to kind of like think about in the kind of like scope of like culture when hiring and just when thinking in like globalization and working with others is the values that change from culture to culture. Like one thing I know about like kind of differences in culture is like how time is perceived, right? Like
Hmm.
in the US time is money. Like everyone's like on time, like 5 minutes early or something like that. But in other countries it's like I'll get there like 5 minutes late. It's like more of like if you think of like a meal, right? Like you have a reservation here, and if you're late, then it gets canceled. But in other countries, a reservation is like, oh, you'll get there and then like get there like 5 or 10 minutes late. It really like depends on like a culture and that sort of thing. But I was just thinking about like how values change depending on like what culture and that sort of thing, and that how that can like applies to the workplace and that sort
Yeah, 100% agree with that because I would say like for the US being capitalistic, definitely people value their time more. They see it almost like it's not the best way to see it, but they see what time is what they make an hour.
Mm,
Um, and they kind of value that. So if it's not worth X amount of money, what they would make in an hour, then they wouldn't value it as highly. Whereas other companies that come from a lot little, a lot less, they value time a lot more, and like they don't value it in a monetary asset sometimes. They value it more as like what do they get from it? Whereas like what would they make from it? I think that's what a lot of people in the US think about. So I think that something that I got again from the table would be like leveraging with limited resources. So being able to like innovate strategies to help people like with less resources and being able to like still provide like high quality education with not having like millions of dollars or thousands of dollars in training equipment where they can just do stuff with like less pretty much. So that's what I kind of got is like doing more with less especially in certain cultures and stuff where they don't value that stuff as much as well.
I agree, 110%.
100%. And I think
I
that's
think we're
about
good on
it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No. Okay, well, I will scribe this up this evening and get that on our Google Doc, and I'll like cut off our first couple minutes of
perfect.
hearing
Okay.
and send y'all a link.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
All right. You have a good
And I'll
one.
see y'all
Great.
Thursday.
See you
For
all
sure.
Thursday. Great work.